Hello and welcome to the Saorsa Podcast. I'm here today with Eva Shepherd. Eva is a local business leader in Chico that has developed and supported partnerships with the city, state, and university to support small businesses and entrepreneurs here in town. She runs ChicoStart and is also a professor or lecturer?
Technically, I'm a lecturer.
Okay.
I just make people call me a professor.
Okay. She's a lecturer at Chico State who goes by professor. So, Eva, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe tell your story of how you came to Chico?
Sure. I'll give you the abridged version. So, first of all, I go by Eva Shepherd or Eva Shepherd-Nicoll because I'm married to a guy with the last name Nicoll, and who is wonderful, and it's the only reason why I can do what I do. So, I'm the director for the Center of Entrepreneurship at CSU Chico. That's my night job. And my day job is I'm Executive Director for ChicoStart, as Duncan has very kindly mentioned. We are really focused on attraction, retention, and kind of the long tail of entrepreneurial investment for the North State. My story on how I got here to Chico is long and torrid. So again, the thumbnail version, that would be all the kids were out of the house. We were already paying a mortgage on a house up in Magalia and thought we would regroup there from the Bay Area. I was in the Bay Area for 30 years, post-college. So we came up here in 2018, and as I've often said, just in time to get my house burned down from the campfire in 2018, and then we relocated to Chico. So that's how we got to Chico.
Oh, I know you mentioned you were in the Bay Area for a while. Mm-hmm. Looking through your LinkedIn, you worked at a sort of startup game studio. Is that fair to say?
Oh, many different places, yes.
Okay. So what would you say?
Were you creeping on my LinkedIn?
I was preparing.
No, that's good. That's good.
So how did you become interested in the startup world? Was it always something that you knew you had an interest in, or?
Well, so growing up in the 60s and 70s, and I don't know that the word startup was used, but in the 70s, I often tell people I got interested in business ownership and starting my own thing when I was in 4-H as a high schooler. So in high school, I was in the 4-H organization where I lived, and I showed livestock animals, as I realized what an opportunity this was, not only to save money for college, but also to learn, because you are given kind of a plan, and you're given, similar to a business plan, believe it or not, you're given direction on how to do a budget. Yeah. You're given a product, whether it's livestock or whatever, and you're to grow that product, show that product, and sell that product. Okay. And I thought I took to it like a fish to water. Yeah. So.
Well, I've always found it interesting, especially having a lot of friends who are 4-H or FFA alumni, that agriculture really is kind of the most natural version of business. It's what started us as a society. So it's interesting that elevated that way. So I understand that you spent a sizable portion of your career in business development.
Yes, correct.
For those who don't understand what business development is, would you like to share that? And then what lessons did you take from that?
I often describe business development as kind of the whole spectrum of relationship management, because sales often has a connotation and it's or a stereotype that is true in a lot of cases, which is kind of a hit it and quit it. Made my number, boom, I move on. Yeah. Whereas with business development, it starts with doing market research or customer research or industry research, and then you go to like refining what it is that you're as a business and how you're trying to develop that business, how you're going to grow in those areas. And then you kind of refine what your program should be to do that. And then you go after the relationships that are going to make that happen. And then you start dating, figure out which the right relationships, right? Then you get some deals signed. So that's like getting married, right? Yeah. And then you have to grow that relationship, right? So all the fun stuff can be in the front, and the harder stuff can be in the back. But I believe in owning the relationship from the beginning and all the way through. And I think that actually makes for a better long-term growth strategy, frankly. So that's what business development is to me. Yeah.
And so just knowing about sort of the ChicoStart ecosystem and how you work with a lot of partners up here in the region, how has that really supported your mission that you're working on now?
Oh, yeah,
and
meaning
preparing
that
you for
that experience in the past and where I'm, good question. And it's actually very relevant. So not only have I been in a myriad of industries, I often make a joke that my resume looks schizophrenic because people don't necessarily understand that if you have the skills that they translate to any industry. So I've been in video games, I've been in networking hardware, I've been in underwater robotics, I've been in aviation, I've been in the startup world numerous times, some of which, had I stayed there all the way to IPO, I wouldn't have to work for the rest of my life. But
my dad's been in the same spot coming from the Bay Area.
Yeah,
so.
it is what it is. And had I not had all those different experiences, both good and bad, in the startup realm, I would not have the depth and breadth of experience to do what I do now. So how does that feed into ChicoStart? So I've worked in and with startups for a very long period of time, since the early 90s, when I was first in venture capital. And that's how I got introduced to startups. And I went, there's my tribe. There's my people, right? I want to touch everything. And then from there, so again, I've been involved with startups for a long time. And so taking over ChicoStart, which is a startup incubator and co-working space, was kind of it was very natural for me to do that. Having been worked in and alongside other startup incubators and co-working spaces. So as a startup myself or in conjunction with. So yeah, I just got lucky. I just was in the right place at the right time.
That's life.
Yeah.
Right on. Through your time working as a consultant here in Northern California, supporting businesses and helping with their plans, and probably taking a sizable cut, because consultants do that, or maybe not as sizable, but you ended up shifting into a role through GO-BIZ, which is the California business development entity. So how did that relationship spur? Was it a pretty natural kind of flow that just came by, or did you have to be really intentional about developing that?
There's then, and then there's now. So I'll answer that in two parts. Sure. One is, yes, I brought some consulting work with me so that I wouldn't be destitute, and then started looking at how I would plug into the local ecosystem. Immediately recognized in the North State that there's a lot of big holes, but there's also a lot of really scrappy startups and a really great entrepreneurial community and culture. And that got me really excited because I already knew that there was a ton of potential up here.
A lot of human capital.
And just we're in a very unique landscape too, literal and figurative. Yeah. There's just so much potential. And so I'm hoping to help spur that potential. GO-BIZ is the Governor's Office of Business, and it's a state department that focuses on helping the economic development of the different regions of California. There are 13 or 14 designated regions. We are in one of them, a very large one, I might add. It's called the North Far North. It's about 40,000 square miles and less than 1 million people.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have a high percentage of that arena being rural. So it needs a whole different approach than, say, the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And again, also going back to when I first moved here and noticing the holes in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's nice that there's a government department looking at how they can help support rural regions, and I see them looking to really help in that arena as well. With that said, I was asked to be the iHub coordinator, which stands for Innovation Hub, while there was someone else running ChicoStart at the time, the illustrious Wendy Porter. And so I got involved there, and that's how. So it was I was asked to, and I could see that there were some potential opportunities to do stuff with them for this region. So that's how I first got introduced to them. ChicoStart itself has been an iHub for over 5 years, and it's a state designation through GO-BIZ. I know, it's really confusing. Yeah. It's like you need an org chart, right?
Yeah.
But
you're saying something in government is confusing?
No, oxymoron, right? Government intelligence. No. It's actually, that designation is up for renewal right now, and we applied for renewal. God willing and the creek don't rise. We hope we get it. We'll get the announcement next week.
You mentioned from kind of your earlier career, you worked on kind of figuring out and understanding a market, and then you came up here, you saw holes in the market, sort of challenges. What are the biggest persistent challenges that you see here in the North State? And then what regions do you look to as parallels to learn from?
Ooh, good question. So off the top of my head, right, when I first bought property up here and then started living here, it's two different segments. I saw a demise. So I bought a further demise. So I bought property up in this area in 2000. 2003, and then I moved here in 2018. That's a huge span. That's 15 years, right? But I came up here, for fun and
you had properties
and weekends
and
and weekends and that kind of stuff. But I saw a very clear demise, and I saw it accelerate in some ways, especially the 7 years before that. And then we had back-to-back disasters, right? Yeah. 2017, the Oro Dam, 2018, Camp Fire, 2019, North Complex Fire, 2020, COVID, 2021, 20, all the Dixie Fire, right? Yeah. All those things have continued to contribute to the decline. I call it, and this is my opinion only, and I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I call it the psychology of decline.
Sure.
And people get numb after a while. And so I think a self-appointed person focusing on attraction, retention, and the long tail of entrepreneurial, investment into this area. The biggest holes that almost anyone would identify for this area are access to capital be the first one and is the most glaring hole. Second is kind of the bringing of industries, higher paying job related industries to this North State. And also, besides the psychology of decline that I mentioned previously, there's also been systematic neglect of the North State. And that's why I'm actually pretty excited about GO-BIZ and their new kind of focus on helping out rural communities and things like that. And frankly, this administration's focus on getting infrastructure monies out and other related, that includes jobs, entrepreneurial ecosystems, et cetera. So the timing's amazing.
Yeah, when you say this administration, are you referring to the state level or the federal level?
Both.
Okay.
So, it's nice that there's a lot of huge federal projects that are being funded very well that people can apply for. And then the state itself also has done well even overall, even through the pandemic. And so they're able to apply their extra, I think they call them rainy day funds, towards projects that are desperately need attention.
And this is sort of just an aside, but why is it that... Is it just because of where you sort of lived that you've chosen Chico? Or I guess what are the biggest difference you see as sort of the economic center point or hub between Reading and Chico? Because those both seem, at least from my understanding, like kind of... Yeah,
I mean, those are the two. I think there's some sort of acronym about the North State and that specific to those two. And I heard it yesterday in a conference, but I forget what the acronym is. And what it means is that we're kind of the two population centers, right, for the North State. So we have the highest concentration of population. And your question is, why do I see us as innovation hubs? Or
why
no?
Why are you in Chico pursuing this work for the North State rather than Reading?
Because I had never actually discovered Reading until after I moved here.
Right on.
I'd only gotten as far as Magalia, right, into the 2003 area, and I was 15 minutes away from a lake where I could kayak and 10 minutes away from bike trails and 2 hours from skiing, so I was like, and it was cheap compared to the Bay Area, so I was excited. I literally had never made it up to Reading until after I moved here.
Right on. Convenience and coincidence.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah. So ChicoStart, like you mentioned, is a startup incubator here in the North State.
Yep.
It was originally established in 2013.
Yep.
How did you enter that scene, as I understand it, in official capacity in 2018? And what was that transition like?
Yes, it's my understanding that they were a formal nonprofit as of 2012-2013 timeframe, and was leftovers from an effort called Innovate North State, and had become a new initiative before the people who ran that initiative went elsewhere. And Wendy Porter, who I mentioned earlier, was in their ChicoStart and saw that this region needed a co-working space. And so she decided to really focus on that and all she had was an intern. She had no income, but she saw how much it was needed for this area. And she really kind of did that in the 2016 timeframe. So I'm not quite sure what happened between 2009. But that was the time frame for that and for her. She asked me to get involved in putting on the first ever entrepreneurial conference in 2019. And she asked me in 2018, sorry, take a step back, to take over as the lead coordinator for the iHub designation. So that's so each step kind of then led to, and then the 2 weeks after the conference we had in 2019, she asked me to take over. Okay. So she had two jobs, like a lot of us up here in the North State did. Yeah. And our family decided that, given everything going on in their family at the time, she wanted to give up one of them, and she felt comfortable, I hope, in handing it off to me.
Right on.
Yeah.
Walk us through a case study. I know in your role, you build a lot of partnerships to support businesses. One market, and this is a product of that, is podcasting. There's quite a lot of podcasts up here. So this studio, I originally came into awareness because of ChicoStart.
Thank you.
So walk us through the case study of how that relationship formed from kind of start to where we are now.
Okay, with BCAC?
Yeah.
Okay. It became clear to me that with podcasts and people needing to do their own video, and even if it was just for their own product or things to that effect, that we needed to have kind of access to those resources, because startups, especially in the last 10 years, have realized that podcasting can help build their brand, help bring brand awareness, help bring awareness to them in general, right? And they're kind of fun.
Right?
So,
that's why I do it.
And they're a great way to explore a space that you might not otherwise feel comfortable, right? I think it makes things more level set and official, right? All at the same time. Nonetheless, when I learned about who was running BCAC TV and what they had to offer, and that they were also a nonprofit, I was like, wow. And so I'd asked for a tour. I got to know the people who run it and said, I think we should be partnering. And it was that simple of a conversation. I could see that this was a resource that we could be highlighting through ChicoStart, because it doesn't get enough attention that there are these resources here. And I'm not saying they want a line out the door, but I wanted to make sure that at least my members could get access and create that kind of partnership that's a win-win.
In the past few years, you've started taking increasing responsibilities within CSU's Chico's Entrepreneurship program, now running the Center for Entrepreneurship. How did that relationship come about?
Originally, there were some activities already transpiring between ChicoStart and the CSU. We were in support of some of the career fairs. We're in support of some other fairs that focus on manufacturing and such too. So we were supporting that. And then there was kind of a next step taken with CSU Chico and Fresno State having a partnership around Blue Tech Valley. And Blue Tech Valley is focused on water, energy, and ag tech. It has two components that they're trying to drive outreach and highlighting of. And one had a student component, one had an industry component. And not long into the sub-grant, Chico State realized that they didn't have the relationships with industry, and we did. So they reached out to us to help partner on that. So that's become a very strong and ongoing relationship. And separate from that, I started growing my relationships within the CSU with the College of Engineering, College of Manufacturing, with the Mechatronics Center. That one really has been awesome. And then just kind of exploring the space. When there was the other three directors of entrepreneurship before me had all done a little something with ChicoStart. And then one of the past directors then recommended me to the school to run the Center of Entrepreneurship. I was basically appointed. I didn't see it coming at all. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's been really a lot of fun, to be honest. So hopefully that describes it.
And then how has that role, kind of being executive director of ChicoStart, which is a startup incubator that can support not only students but also community members, as well as the Center for Entrepreneurship within the university, which is obviously exclusive to students. How has being in a leadership role in both of those entities served to facilitate greater growth here in Chico and the larger North State?
It's been amazing, actually. So I've actually gotten stronger relationships with people who are alumni that are entrepreneurs, and that in and of itself has helped to grow the mentor program.
Great.
And that in and of itself also has become very symbiotic, meaning they're able to contribute to both ChicoStart, either as a mentor or to leverage resources or to contribute resources. For example, maybe somebody has an expertise in SEO and they want to do a workshop for the greater community. Awesome, we can help them do that, right?
Facilitate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe another person who is alumni and has their own startup needs interns. They come to me, right? I also have them leverage the Career Center and Handshake, but they'll often ask me to vet, and then I try to match based on personality. I also have been able to tap into local entrepreneurs who are alums to speak at the Center for Entrepreneurship Speaker Series. And other panels. I've also had the opportunity to grow relationships with my peers at other CSUs and actually other UCs. Opportunities I would have never saw coming as well. So I'm sitting on like several grant advisory boards for everything from STEM and entrepreneurship to robotics and entrepreneurship to biomaterials and entrepreneur. I mean, it's crazy. It's fun.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been a 10X already, even though it's only been a couple of years.
I think one of my goals in creating this particular podcast is to serve as an example and a learning opportunity for other leaders out in the U.S. and maybe beyond to learn from your experiences about how to formulate all of this and go about it. So what suggestions do you have for community leaders or aspiring community leaders trying to do something similar for their communities in the rural U.S.?
I don't want to overuse this word, but really looking at your entrepreneurial ecosystem and looking at what are the missing components. So the general components of an ecosystem are for entrepreneurs are things like access to capital, access to mentors, access to resources, business resources and technical assistance, and other related programs that let them lift from where they stand. Some people might be in startup mode. Some people might be a small business that just need to pivot, etc. It's hard to be everything to everyone, but it's really looking at, okay, where are the glaring holes and how do we help fill them? And sometimes that means you have to reach outside of your region to help fill those. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
I have to reach out to Sacramento. I have to reach out to the Bay Area. I have to reach out to Bend, Oregon. I have to reach out, to help fill those holes, whether it mean marketing mentors or videography mentors or, again, access to capital. It's just
sounds like that might be a big part.
It might be a big part, yes. Yeah. That would be my advice. The other would be, and this is what I'm going to be doing, hopefully with the new iHub designation, hopefully have the funds to do through that renewed designation, and that is be really intentional about what groups you're reaching out to. A lot of people get left in the fray, especially like if you look at a majority of panels in different subjects, you're going to see a lot of manels. I think it's really good to have intentional workshops for, say, the Hispanic community. Yeah. I think it's really important to have content that's been converted to multiple languages. I think it's important to have outreach to women in business. I think it's important to, and that doesn't have to all be high tech. And across the board, specific to being intentional, it would be to underserved communities. The other thing I would also highly recommend is also looking at bringing in industry that could thrive in your area that's, has a average salary that's higher than retail. So that overall will contribute to the success of your region.
Yeah. So you sort of brought up something I was going to ask later. Obviously, there's historically and sadly continuously a lot of bias in the workforce and in entrepreneurship, probably in capital deployment towards men and particularly white men. So as a woman, how have you approached that? What barriers have you faced and how did you overcome them?
Regardless of gender or identity, I think there's something to be learned from everyone. And so I take that quite literally, no matter what age as well. Because sometimes there's ageism as well. We can talk about that later. But I've always taken that approach, that there's always something to learn from people and bringing them into your causes. There is great benefit to working with the existing system to help it grow into a more inclusive system, right? Instead of trying to start from scratch. And then showing them the value of doing that. That's super important. I mean, I don't mean to say that everyone wants what's in it for me, but they kind of do.
Well, humans are human.
Reptilian brain, something. With that said, if you're able to leverage some existing relationships or existing resources, regardless of gender or nationality or their historical activities, I think it's really important to bring them along. And that's part of having them contribute to identifying the holes in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? And then also being very intentional. And I've used that word a lot, and a lot of people do, but I'm sorry, but it's important. It's just true. It's just true. You have to be intentional in your attention.
Yeah.
Right? Intentional in your attention. When you do that, it's not a question. It's more of a statement. Meaning, instead of saying, "Oh, it'd be really nice if you would help on this women panel, or this Hispanic business panel, or it's not that. It's about getting them more involved literally, not just peripherally."
So working in a role where you mentor or facilitate the mentorship for a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, some of which have obviously an entrepreneurship background and are trying to find a product, and some who have a product or a background and are trying to learn the entrepreneurship side. What are the biggest mistakes you see entrepreneurship's making, and what are the remedies to those?
If you're talking about, are you talking about maybe the demographic that might be like 30 and under? Or you're talking about
maybe both or all?
Okay.
Maybe you could separate them?
Being in my late 50s, I can tell you there's an interesting divide in my observation and my humble opinion only. There's an interesting divide. I'd say those that are about 30, 35 and older were raised in the wilderness and thrown into civilization.
Okay.
I'd say those that are 35 and under were raised in civilization and thrown into the wilderness. There's an interesting sense of entitlement.
Sure.
As well. and that they don't have to work as hard. There's other, that's not everyone. It just seems kind of a general attitude. I might not get it, but I hear this from a lot of people. Well, everything I ever learned, or anything I ever thought was relevant about learning about entrepreneurship or business, or I've learned on the internet. I'm like, knowing without doing is not learning, right? I just, or I learned off of YouTube or whatever. That just blows my mind, because it's not that I don't incorporate videos in my classroom. It doesn't mean that I don't often watch TED Talks.
You can learn the principles, but not the applications.
Right. And because, what did Margaret Thatcher say? Beware of your thoughts, because your thoughts become your intentions, and your intentions become your actions, and your actions become your character.
So do you think that younger people need to accept and be a little more humble that there's a lot more to learn?
They need to understand there's a lot more to learn, and they need to not buy into the myths and misinformation that's out there, right?
And what are some of those big myths?
That when you're an entrepreneur, you can set your own hours. You don't have a boss.
You can set your own hours, but they have to be 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay, you can set your own hours. My bad. But that you don't have to report to anyone, which is not necessarily true. That you can take a vacation whenever you want. Not necessarily true. That you don't have to pay taxes. You can write off everything. Not necessarily true. So there's a lot of, I often make a joke in my class about, hi, I'm here to be the myth buster. That's often how I start out one of my first classes. Yeah. I'm here to be the myth buster. I want to set your expectations now. I don't think that it's younger people don't want to work harder per se. I don't know that they've been indoctrinated early enough in what hard work is.
Sure.
Again, that's not for everyone. I know some entrepreneurial students and young entrepreneurs that are busting their can, just, and make me proud every day. Sure. But there is this interesting, back to my, wilderness versus civilization. And
sure.
That, yeah.
It's an interesting metaphor. I like it.
I stole it from an NFL coach.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, plagiarism. So I know you mentioned earlier that there's a lot you can learn from anyone. So when you're in a classroom environment, you obviously are teaching, and a lot of people are hopefully taking something away and learning something from you. But what are some of the biggest lessons you've taken away from students?
Oh, some of the biggest lessons I've taken away from students are that's really important to set their expectations early so that they can approach things in the right way, whether it's that class or whether it's what they're learning from that class. It's also, I think other lessons I've learned is, I don't know if it's a lesson I've learned, but it's amazing to see when they get some aspect from the class, whether it's through different programs that I do in the class or with the class, and that it clicks for them. Yeah. That's an amazing experience. Spark. Yes. In fact, yes, it's amazing. Or they understand, or when they go through, I guess I'm not telling you lessons I've learned. Sure. I guess I'm just sharing like experiences I've had, the joy of teaching. Right. I just got this email yesterday from a student from 2 semesters ago, and he wrote to thank me for going through a specific self-assessment process in the class that taught him how to then approach what he wants to do with his life, and has put him on this trajectory. Like, I cried when I was done. No, I'm not joking.
I try to send cry emails to some of my old professors and teachers.
Well, so I don't think he tries.
Because I try to be grateful whenever I remember
to be grateful.
Exactly. And so I definitely have some teachers who, without them, I would not be as successful. I would probably might be in prison, or because I was a bad kid, but I had some people who got my back and recognized that I wasn't a bad kid. I was just doing bad things.
Right. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. And funny that you say that, because sometimes I'll say to students, like, I believe in you. Why don't you believe in you? Yeah. Right. Like, I can see your potential. You might want to take a different look at yourself. Right. Yeah. Anyway, lessons I've learned from students. Boy, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. It'll probably I'll have some epiphany in either in a minute or two, or tonight. Okay. Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have ChicoStart, you have this stuff at the university, you're involved with, I'm sure, some other entrepreneurship that you might have a bigger stake in. How do you balance all of this? What are those keys to success where you don't lose your mind and pull out your hair every day?
All the kids are at the house, so no. So my husband and I are involved in a couple of different businesses outside of that. So I have my nonprofit business, which is ChicoStart, and then I have an LLC where we have a couple of different things going on. It includes real estate, it includes ranch management, etc. I also have some investments. and I'm active in those investments. One has in robotics and one's in electric motorcycles. I used this word earlier about growing awareness and growing the right attitude for the region. I use the word intentional, and I have to say I have to be very intentionally on top of time management. I personally, this isn't for everybody, but I personally have to be very compartmentalized. I'm often at the I have to be at the college sometimes at 7 a.m. to make sure everything's up and running for the day, and then I have to come to work, and then I have to go back to the college on certain days to run things there, and then I have to come back to work. And I'm saying that between the CFE and ChicoStart. The things I do either for my church or for our business or for other programs we're involved with are definitely evening or weekend activities.
Sure. And
as I briefly mentioned earlier, I couldn't do it without my husband. He's a great supporter, whether it's liking my posts for my business or my school-related activities, or if it's helping take care of our other businesses. So
kind of having that rock.
Oh, yeah. And holding down the fort and, even reminding me of my priorities.
Yeah.
Right
on. So this is more of a personal question, and you can decline to answer. That's totally welcome. But being so involved in entrepreneurship and having your own businesses, I'm genuinely curious what percentage of your asset allocation is in stocks and things that are out of your control, and what are things that are more active investments?
I would say 70-30. Okay. So 70% of my assets, so to speak, are things I can control, and 30% are not. Sure. So of that 30, there is probably 10% that are really out of my control, and 20% that I am an active investor in.
Other entrepreneurship ventures, more venture kind of.
Yeah, more passive role, whether I'm a board advisor or a board advisor and investor or something like that. The 70% I can control, of that, I would say 60% is passive income. And
when you say 60%, is that 60% of the pie or 60% of the 70%?
60% of the 70%.
Okay.
Sorry.
Fractions.
Yeah. Fractions. Yeah, I know math. That's passive income. And those were very intentional investments because we didn't survive the 2000 crash, which no one talks about, where our pensions were and our 401ks are completely wiped out. And so we're still, even in our late age, still rebuilding from that. And so we see that as kind of our safety net.
Overall, what would you say? I think most people watching this can agree, and you've been rather successful in the various ventures you've applied yourself to. What are your major keys to success, characteristics, or things that you had to intentionally develop about yourself that have helped you thrive in everything that you work on?
Very nice question. Thank you. I will, though, balance this by saying that I've had plenty of disasters.
Sure.
Okay. Whether they were things out of my control, well, they were all out of my control for the most part. Whether it was the 2000 crash that I mentioned or other things that were out of our control that then kind of took the rug out from underneath us. So things haven't always been a joyride and have not always made our bank accounts fat. And I see another cycle coming. Anyway.
This is not financial advice.
This is not financial advice. Back to how have I approached things and what have I learned and what have I had to adapt to. When I was young, I was very lead, follow, or get the blank out of my way. I've always been very self-motivated. I've always been very, because no one paid my way. I'm going to help you write this essay. I'm going to help you get into this college. And that didn't happen in the 70s and 80s, folks. And I'm a better person for it. I know that it all depends on me. And I'm not everyone's cup of tea. So, and when I say that, it's because I'm about to say the following. People will sometimes tell me to quit being so cheerful.
I've been told I'm best taken in doses.
Oh, okay, there you go. I've had people tell me, quit being so cheerful, or why are you so cheerful in the morning? Or, I'm just, every day's a gift. Every day is a gift, and I know that probably better than some. I know what I've been put on this earth to do. I'm very clear, and I've been very clear for a long time, and that is, to help make things happen. And in this case, it became, even this case being this chapter of my life, is help this region rise. I believe strongly doing everything I can to make things happen for this region.
Sure.
And so, cheerful attitude, can-do attitude, understanding that relationships are everything. Learning that, and I mean this literally and figuratively, that toxic relationships are nothing but a waste of time, energy, and space, and eat away at the goodness of others. So it's really easy for me to cut the cord and create dispensable space. Yeah. Because when you wrestle with a pig, you're bound to get mud on you. Okay? There's a key.
I can tell you were in 4-H.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's also important to hone your instincts. I don't know that enough gets talked about specific to that. There is this intangible, tangible, and that is there's some people call it their inner voice or their promptings or their conscience or whatever. You give it whatever name you want. Okay, some people call it the Holy Spirit. The more you listen to it and realize it and are able to separate that from, say, what other people have, which I don't have, which is anxiety or worry or things like that, and you listen to it and act on it. So it's one thing to hear it. There's another thing to listen to it and act on it, because the more you do, the more refined that instinct becomes and the more it contributes to your success. I actually emphasize that in my classes too. I know it sounds really like a really ethereal kind of... But it isn't. You'll find that 90% of the time, if it's tuned in, it's 90% or higher, frankly, it'll help lead you in the right direction.
Your gut.
Yeah, your gut, like that gut instinct.
Yeah.
Lastly, I would say to anybody listening that it's really important to help yourself discard anything that could be a negative attitude. Like you might be a generally cheerful person, but have like a negative attitude towards money or something. Sure. And money is a whole other subject. You can spend a whole podcast or 12 on money and attitude and how people react to it, things like that. Money is a tool, folks. It's a tool. That's it. Remove the emotion. So, I think that's really important for anybody with entrepreneurial leanings, because you want to remove as many speed bumps as possible, because there's plenty of stuff that's going to hit you that you don't always see coming.
Obviously, and you mentioned there were some failures that or some things that happened, disasters as you put it, that were out of your control. But what were some of the despite all of the successes, big failures that you took away from the most, that you wouldn't give up if you had the second shot?
Ooh. I don't know about not give up, but sincerely, any of them, because I would not be where I am today.
Sure.
And where I am today is in a really sweet spot. And the reason why I was just saying this to my husband last night at dinner, literally, I was like, I don't understand how I get so lucky. I'm not the best at anything I do. I'm just really driven, and I'm just really sincere in my relationships, and I'm really blunt. But people know where they stand. My kids even say that. We always know where we stand with you.
Yeah. I'm not the favorite kid this week.
Yeah, that's right. There's been some negative experiences that I wouldn't take away because, again, everything leads you to where you're at, right? And it's how you choose to deal with those situations, whether it was the 2000 crash, which was devastating and still hurts to even think about, or experience a period of my life where there was very active ageism, where people, you're overqualified. When really what they wanted was a 20 or 30 something.
That they could pay 20 or 30 something an hour.
Right. Yeah. To be a VP or a director, right? Like those things I think are something that need more highlight and attention to as well. In fact, I was talking to someone recently who's like a PhD, and he's done some really cool things in startups and that kind of stuff. And he's like, he's built national brands, and he's done really cool things for American Express. And he's just amazed at how he's not taken as seriously, even though he's done amazing things.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had a really hard boss once when I was right in my externship, right? And when I was really young. And he left an indelible impression on me as, one, a boss not to be when I became a boss. And two, he did give me some really good advice on a couple things. And one of those things is I share to this day with others, and that is listen. Just listen, right?
Dude, that's actually that's right below Saorsa Podcast. Listen, just listen. Please listen.
He's no longer with us. He used to be the head of Ingersoll Rand. He was tough. I took that to heart because I do move fast and break things sometimes. And so I used to, back in the day before we had these being a phone with a calendar on it and all this other thing, we had flip calendars with each day on it, and I wrote it on the top of every day of the rest of that entire year. And it's something I actually sometimes write in my notebooks today when it's a day I know I need to listen better and to slow down and really be more observant. I don't know. Sure. I think sometimes tough bosses can teach you really good life lessons.
Yeah. I think my best boss was the one from In-N-Out who kicked my butt. Yeah. And called me an idiot because I was like asking questions. Like he had everyone's best interest at heart, but he was not. He wasn't coddling.
Yes.
So.
And I think, and so you learned a lot from that, right? Yes. Well, good.
All right. So with that, I think we'll just close up. What kind of final comments you have? I have an audience that's mostly located in Chico. Where can people find you if they're interested in starting their own business? Well,
thank you. Thank you for letting me plug my business. I appreciate that. So ChicoStart is located in beautiful downtown Chico. We are inside the City Hall building at 411 Main Street. You can go check out our website to see a list of all our resources and programs, and you can reach out to me at any time via email at eva@chicostart.com. And we have a ton of business resources, and we can help you with everything from ideation to MVP and beyond. Purely selfish, I will say that a community is only as strong as the story it can tell. Please get involved in your community in whatever area makes sense, whether it's entrepreneurship for you, or whether it's food security, whether it's equitable access, or supporting students and their podcasts. And thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot, Duncan.
Of course, thank you. So with that, thank you for watching the Saorsa Podcast. Please consider following, liking, subscribing, depending on the platform you're on. Give it a 5-star review if you're on Spotify, Apple, whatever. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you again, Duncan.